Good morning, everybody. So have you ever thought about inking or anything that you might not have? Have you ever looked at comic books and you thought, oh man, that's awesome. That's a great drawing. Well, it starts out a lot differently than it used to. But years ago, I mean, even sometimes now they still ink, but when you look at a project, this collaboration of artists that come together, layer upon layer upon layer, builds a comic. And I want you to see what we're doing here. Glenn and I have assembled a couple drawings here I think you're going to be interested in, and the history of all this, and who was the best collaboration of inker, pencilers, and the whole gamut on comics. So stick around, and you will see some magic happen.
Welcome to the Comics Unlimited podcast with your hosts, Glenn B. Fleming and Ted Davis.
Hey, good morning. I'm Ted Davies. I'm an artist and author. Who's the guy with me here?
And I'm Glenn Fleming, and I'm an artist and author and publisher too, and a few other things as well.
Right.
Allegedly.
Yeah, right. So how's it going, man? You doing well?
Yeah, doing really well. Yeah, well, I'm working on a new Hatch strip right now. I just finished inking 2 pages. I drew 2 pages yesterday. I think 2 pages today. Doing really moving on it.
Good. Awesome. I've been working on some print stuff too for an upcoming show and that. So
you're going to the con, aren't you? You're going to the con, aren't you? So,
I am in March.
Yeah.
Yep. So first one in 2 years. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to Comics Unlimited podcast. This is on Ted Davies Artistry, obviously YouTube channel. Check out everything that we're doing. We are part of the Rising Tide Broadcast Network, proud affiliates. We're a group of creatives that help creatives build their business. Check out everything that we're doing on Facebook on Rising Tide Broadcast Network. And we're also today sponsored by Cashman's Comics in Bay City. Check out everything that John Cashman's doing, whether you're a collector like me or if you just want to get into comics. Check out everything he's doing. He ships nationwide. And yeah, it's awesome. Say hi to Petey if you're lucky enough to be at Bay City at the shop. He's the best guard dog around. So, all right. And we'll leave that up there for you so you guys can check out Cashman's Comics after the show. So, inking, man, we got a lot of stuff here. Inking, it's an art form in itself, is it not?
Sure, it certainly is. It certainly is. Yeah, I think a lot of people think that inking is just to make the drawings legible for printing, but it's a lot more. Which is true, but there's a lot more to it than that. You know, and a lot of inkers are not good pencilers, but they're artists in their own right, and you get some artists who can pencil and ink and do that, you know, and you get some people who pencil, ink, and color, you know, and we'll look at those kind of things later. But yeah, inking is a really difficult discipline, I think.
Right. I think that you're telling a different story than the penciler in a lot of regards, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. If you look at the any penciler, especially people like John Buscema and Mike Zeck, excellent storytellers, excellent pencilers. And I mention those two first because I've seen some pencils of Buscema's for when he worked on Conan the Barbarian, the black and white comic back in the 70s, I think it was. And his pencil work is minimum. There's hardly any detail in there. And then I think it was probably Roy Thomas, I'm not sure, was the writer and editor of that book. And I don't know who got Alfredo Alcala on board. But what an inker that guy is with his pens and his brushes. And I think we've got a piece to show later on that. The detail he puts into Buscema is just line. If you look at the Buscema pencils, I wish I could draw like that. There's just one line. He just gets one line down, and it's the right line, like that Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko do. There's no wasted line. And the Mike Zeck stuff on the Spider-Man that he drew many years ago.
That's true.
My point is that it's okay having that perfect line on the pencil, but then you need an inker or an embellisher. And I would call Alcala an embellisher because he embellishes the drawing an inker, the way I look at it, an inker just basically not traces what the penciler has done, but doesn't add anything.
Right.
But Alcala, we don't have the samples. I wish I did, but the Alcala stuff is absolutely incredible, and I would love to know how fast he was, because I bet he was just whizzing through those pages, even though they got that fantastic.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
it's a pretty intense. They're pretty intense.
Yeah,
I am. I have to say.
Well, I told you the story of him with the Japanese and the war. So I not tell you that
Tell me
story.
about that again.
Well, Alfredo Alcala is born in the Philippines, Filipino.
Yes.
And he was about, in the war when the Japanese came and invaded, he was about 10, and he was an artist then. And what he did was, this is incredible. When the Americans finally got to the Philippines and they were fighting the Japanese, little Alfredo, 10 or 11, would quietly saunter down into the Japanese camp, and they give him stuff like soldiers do to kids. They didn't hurt him or anything. They were just guys,
He's a kid, is a mascot, right?
Yeah, and he's walking about and he's talking to them and they're laughing with him. And then he'd go home, 11 years old, 10 years old, and he'd draw what he'd seen. He didn't just draw a tank. He drew the type of tank it was. He drew the vehicles, he drew the weapons, and he would pass those drawings on to the Americans.
He's a little
spy. The soldiers knew exactly what they had. They knew how many men they were.
Probably saved a lot of lives.
Yeah,
you did tell me that story. I do recall that.
Yeah,
I'm glad everybody else can hear it now.
It's an incredible thing, and I just think that any kid who's 10 who can go home and draw a tank perfectly, I think he can whiz through any kind of artwork he wants to.
Right. Hello, Carl and Willow. By the good this morning. I'm looking over here at the dog.
Hi, everybody.
Yep. I want to say good morning, everybody.
I don't know what Alcala would use. I would imagine he used a brush, looking at his work.
I would think so.
Yeah. Or a quill pen.
The quill pen, that's another art form that's it's not lost to the ages by any means.
Well, I'm going to start using a quill pen. I've never used one, but I've got some, and I'm going to do some artwork with them, see what you can do. Because normally, if I use I use one of these things.
Right.
See it against there.
Right, tech pen.
Just like a nib thing, a dip pen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
I just ordered a bunch of Bristol pens that came in, or Barol pens. One of them was a brush tip, and I've been playing around with that just to see. It's an interesting control thing, though.
Yeah.
Because you put too much on it, too little. It's a little bit like a brush, but it's not, because you don't, because you don't know how much fluid's coming out of the container versus what you're using, on the tip of the brush.
I've never used one of those things, but I will get around to it, because I just sometimes I just use this brush.
Sure.
It's a bit it's just a number 4 brush. It's a bit
got it.
You can see it. Can you see it there?
Yep.
I mean, you can see it even bends.
Yeah, right. It's got a little bit
because it's so old, but it's just perfect for what I do. And then sometimes I'll use a pen. Just
it always surprised me that they didn't use Mylar on the comics. Like in architecture, we would do these Mylar prints, Mylar drawings, and if you made a mistake and erased it, it would be white line, but it wouldn't show up on the blueprint.
Right.
So but the lines were so crisp. I mean, because we'd have to use a tech pen on them, and ink onto that Mylar was amazing. I mean, it was just bullet perfect,
But is Mylar more expensive than Bristol?
Oh yeah, and it's like film, and you get film. The paper cuts are bad. Oh, this stuff. Yeah. This would go down to the bone. I mean, it was terrible.
I find it really interesting that you get somebody like Kirby would draw his pages and send them in, or take them into the office, and then Stanley had put the indications for the lettering. The book would go to the letterer. Those physical pages would go to the letterer, and then they come back and be checked, and then they go to the inker.
Isn't that
the process is incredible? Yeah, the process is incredible.
Like I was talking about yesterday in the books that I collect, the old books, the amount of work that went into them just to produce one page is incredible. I can't imagine what they went through in comic books. God.
Well, we said before on this show about sometimes the mistake is the best part. Well, I love to see these old Kirby pages and Steranko pages with the whiteout on, and you can see where somebody, I don't know whether it would be them or whether it be John Romita in the office or whatever, where they would go over, because there's a fantastic 4-page where I think Joe Sinnott has coloured it, well, blacked in what's Ben's girlfriend called, Alicia's hair, and it's black, and I think she has red hair, and on the artwork you can see the white out, that somebody's whited all the black out for the colourer to put red hair in. I think things like that are brilliant. You know?
That's great. That's a story too. That's a story in itself. Carl says that maybe someday we should do a show about artist tools. I can do that. Traditional art, absolutely.
Yeah,
we could do that. Let's make a note of that. We'll definitely do that for Comics Unlimited.
Okay.
So let me bring up one of the drawings that we were talking about. Okay, so we're going to show the pencils first. Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about this one?
Well, this is a page from Fantastic Four 61, and it's obviously Jack Kirby, because we can't do a show without mentioning his name.
Right, man.
But why not? I mean, he's just the best. But if you look at try not to get too involved in those beautiful pencils, because I can never work out where they bothered inking them. I just want to see that.
I would have just copied them. Done.
But look at that. Look at how beautiful that it is. And look at the composition in it, the arrangement of the figures and all this kind of thing. It's just perfection and brilliance. And here's a note. So as you'll see in a moment when you show the ink version, look at Sue Storm, top panel, middle of the panel. Look at her leg with the shadow. Now go to the left and look at Reed's hand. You can see that Jack Kirby draws the black in, but he doesn't draw solids. He draws lines. Look at Reed underneath with the inside of his leg, and then look in the middle, the third panel to Sandman. Look at his legs. Look where the stroke of the pencil is. Now, as we'll see on the inks, Joe Sinnott obviously doesn't have time to do all that, and I think that's a shame, because I think that Kirby drew everything the inker needed. Not that Joe Sinnott's no slouch,
just to follow it,
but
rather than embellish.
Yes, but he's on those sections, Joe Sinnott turns into an inker rather than an embellisher, because there's a lot of work that he does on Kirby, where he does a lot of that cross hatching and all that kind of stuff.
And we'll go back and forth. We'll flip through this, and then we'll go back to it again. So good morning, Pete, by the way. I want to say good morning. Okay, so let's go to the ink version of this. Now you guys can see the difference.
Can you see what
let me go back for a second, just for a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look at Sue's leg in the middle of the top panel, and you can see that what Jack is doing there. He knows that is space, and there is no black anywhere. It's just shadow. But Joe Sinnott up against his deadline and all that. Look at the Sandman's left leg on the third panel. He's just blocked it in, and I think it's very good. But I think it's a real shame that he wasn't more truer to the pencils. But he has a deadline to make, so it's all that kind of thing.
Interesting stuff, though, man.
It's just wonderful, isn't it? It's just absolutely beautiful. And I think I told this story as well. I'm going to say it again. And Carl, yes, I am contractually obligated to mention Kirby. Was that Joe Sinnott said in an interview, not with me, unfortunately, but I saw an interview, and when he got his package from Marvel with the latest FF in it, he would lose money because he would spend the first hour just looking at it. That's how wonderful Jack's work is, but we're not talking about that. But you can see the job of the inker after the letter.
Amazing stuff.
If you just go back to the pencils again.
Yeah. Sure. Yep. Hi. Good morning, Ryan. I'm hopping back to the.
Yeah, it's okay.
So bear with me.
You can see Jack's notes down the side, right, of what's going on.
Yep.
And look at this. Look at the sound effects in there. A thok on the second panel, and fantastic. But you can see where Stan Lee's put his little work where he's placed his worth balloons. Now go back to the ink, and then probably Artie Simek or Sam Rosnan would have lettered this. Look at that. Look at where they are. It's just incredible. And so when Joe Sinnott gets this page, it's lettered, and he has to follow. He leaves parts of it out, because you can see, like on Sandman in panel 3, his shoulder's missing, but on the pencil drawing, it's there. So, you can
see it right there.
It's just, you can see exactly what Joe Sinnott is doing, what his job is. But I think, like I said, Joe Sinnott is an embellisher. People like Mike Royer is an inker, and that's because Kirby said to Mike, as far as I understand it, don't change anything. So Mike is a brilliant inker, and he's a great artist. He's a fabulous artist and letterer, and his work on the New Gods is absolutely stunning. But I think had the brief been different, he might have given us a bit more of him.
I think so.
But that's just my opinion, you know.
Yeah.
But Royer is a great inker.
Let me ask you this now. Now, I know that you're old school collector, but what do you think about in some of the newer, even the indie stuff? Because I pick up a lot of indie stuff, but I still, mainstream, I still do a lot with Hellboy and everything else, all the collections, Geiger, all of it. Digital ink is different. I think that, digital inking is an art form in itself too, but it's not the same.
No,
it's not the same as this technical side of it. The manual side of inking directly to the page it's like the only way I could probably, the same with music. Music digitally now is a lot different than when it used to be taped, literally right onto tape from the, when people would sing right to the tape or right to a record for that matter. It's different, and it's more technical.
With the invention of the compact discs, 40 years ago.
Yeah. Is it that long? Jeez.
Yeah, we all thought, wow, this is brilliant, because it was so crystal clear. But I mean, I don't play vinyl. I haven't played vinyl for a long time, but I still got all my vinyl records, as I know you do, and I'll always keep them. But there is when you put the vinyl on next to the CD, the vinyl is warmer. There's a depth of sound that the CD is so clinical. And I think that applies to the same as a computer inking, and that's why I don't want to do it. It's not because I'm not so old that I can't change. I just prefer. I've done digital inking.
Well, yeah, you worked on it, and that's what I mean. I've worked in. Sorry.
So no, go ahead. You've worked.
I worked in digital on a lot of different things too, and but it's just different, and I'm not taking anything away from it at all.
Not at all.
But there's something about the technique and the talent, if you want to call it that. And because I do believe it's a mixture of both. You have a certain technique, certain stroke line, whatever, but it is the talent that gets that story line down, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Carl, let me throw this out here real quick. Excuse me.
The editor, Stan Lee, would underline it in his script.
Got it. So, and to ask the question, who decided which words or dialogue were emphasized? So Stan Lee would be...
Yeah, Stan Lee, or the editor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the writer. He was the writer on those scripts. Some words get more ink. They don't get more ink. It's a different kind of pen. It's just a thicker pen.
Right. What do you think? Who do you think was the first inker? Because I noticed back in the early 40s that it was very light ink. The more color, more. It wasn't. You know what I mean? There wasn't like in the Superman, the Action Comics. It wasn't. It was very faint line. Very.
Yeah, I think the first inker was probably somebody in a cave about 50,000 years ago. But I think that what happened, I mean, this is probably another show as well, because I think that comics are maligned because of that word, comic books. Because you notice all the professionals are like us, call them books. We don't call them comic books.
Yeah, well,
Jack Kirby said to me, Jack Kirby didn't draw comic books. He said he drew books.
Yeah.
There's a stigma attached to it. But I think that what happened probably in the United States in the 30s when Superman and Batman came along, the drawings are really, really simple, cartoony drawings with what I call a European line, a thin line, just one line, not much weight on either end of it or in between and whatever. And they were basically, and then they were colored. And I think basically they were how can I put it? They were color books with drawings in rather than stories that were colored.
That could have been because of the rationing, whatever. I mean, that could have been a lot of things. Ink was used in everything back then, everything from typewriters to, to pens to, and it wasn't like, they had to ration everything during the wars. So maybe that could have been, I don't know, but
it's like everything else. It's, everything's a mix. There's never any one thing in anything that happens, is there? There's always a mixture of things.
Sure.
But I think that with my own inking, I've gone back to a sort of a European stance, really, which probably makes sense. But I back in the 80s, I taught myself to use a brush, and it's really difficult. But when you get into it, it's really nice. And I was just trying to be Joe Sinnott. doing that beautiful thick thin line.
Weren't we all, right?
Yeah. And I'd look at people like Frank Giacoya, and I can see that
Mhm.
Frank Giacoya, who was superb. I wish he'd work on my stuff. He was what I call an inker. Because you can see when you look at his Fantastic Fours or anything Kirby was doing, you can really see Kirby, But when Joe Sinnott gets hold of it, he smooths it out a lot.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, it is very
It's totally different, but just as good, and they're just wonderful. And
yeah,
it depends. I think it depends on how much time people have got as well. If people are really up against a deadline, as you'll know, you won't go with the cross hatching so much. But if you've got a bit of time and you're enjoying that particular drawing, you might do it. I think there's a lot of that going on because these people are working against deadlines all the time.
right.
And Jack Kirby's
it's all getting it down on the paper. Yeah.
Jack Kirby's gripe was if I've got time to draw it, they've got time to ink it.
True.
So he's right.
And I like the fact that they're you've got the one-stop shops like Frank Miller. He's inked. Like we talked about in the prior show. If you haven't seen that one, check that one out in our video catalog.
Fantastic stuff. Yeah.
But he does. I think it's actually kind of good in a way to collaborate in a lot of the regards, inking wise and lettering for that matter. But because they're layering that story. I don't know. Maybe it would have been a little bit. I mean, Jack's a little different. He was an anomaly. I mean, it was like he could do it all, really.
Yeah.
And he told the story the one way. And you and I are both pro that. But like with Mike Mignola now, he does the same thing that Jack did. He'll color in the area, or he'll put B everywhere where it needs to be black. He'll do everything so that then his wife scans it in, and then his colorist comes in, which they've got to pair exactly what colors that they work with Hellboy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then she or he, I think it's a she, applies everything, including the black line to his pencils, and it's just incredible the work that they do together as a collective.
Do you know one thing I can't do because I'm scared? When I was drawing comics in the 80s, I had to, if there was a black area, I had to pencil it, shade it in.
Yeah.
Because I was scared that if I put B in it, it might get printed with a B on it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
So I had to, just for my own peace of mind, it might have taken me longer, but for my own peace of mind, I had to know that there wasn't going to be any mistakes.
Understood.
And then later when I was inking my own, I still didn't put a B in it. I would always pencil it fully.
Well, sometimes it would flash through, right?
Yeah,
on the ink.
Right.
Sometimes sometimes that lead.
You've got to be careful,
Right.
It's
what kind of lead did you use? Was it 2H or what was it that you used?
I just started using a 2B. Sorry, an HB.
An HB.
I used it. I used a 3B, which was too soft.
Yeah, the 2H is that's drafting 101. I've used 2H since I was 16 years old.
That's really hard, isn't it? And the 3B is really soft.
Kirby, and you'll notice when I do my live drawing, it's hard to see my lines because it looks it's so light,
Well, Kirby used to use a 2B.
Yeah.
And he knows what he's doing. But I'm using an HB at the moment, and it's on the borderline, it's in the middle there. And
have you ever used blue inks or blue pencils or anything to?
I have, but I don't like it. I don't
either. I don't either.
I tell you, there's two things I don't like about it. It doesn't seem right to be drawing in it to start with, and then it really irritates me that you don't have to erase the lines because the blue doesn't pick up on the printing press,
right?
Or when the engraver gets it, but it really irritates me when I see John. I mean, get this: when I see John Romita's artwork, it's senior, and he's pretty good, but he draws with a blue pencil, and you can see. I don't like it. He's got to rub it out. He's got to get rid of it.
It throws me off. And maybe you and I see blues differently too. There might be something in it that just is annoying. I like blue. Blue's one of my favorite colors. So, but yeah, some of it just doesn't. It's almost confusing sometimes when I'm looking. Yeah. What did I mean by that? You know what I mean? Did I mean to draw that part?
Well, back in the 90s, I did a few family portraits with a blue pencil, and they look okay, but I soon got out of that. It doesn't look as good as a pencil drawing or an ink drawing or whatever you do.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
know
you know,
guys that use digital and they use the blue line on the digital, and
what's
so
the
it's
point
like
of
I'm
that?
like, really,
What's the point of
that's
that?
cool. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's a layer that they're going to take off anyway, which is kind of
I know.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's interesting. What
Yeah, is
was
it
when did you start falling into the like the inks? Like, how did you when who was like the first one that you really looked at? Because it's up till like probably 20 years ago, I didn't even look at the inkers. It's like whatever, I wasn't
the
even thinking about it.
very early on? Because when I used to buy TV 21 back in the mid 60s,
And what is TV 21
it's a
publication?
yeah, it's TV Century 21, but shortened to TV 21, and it was more or less a vehicle for Jerry Anderson's Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet.
Mm,
Those
okay.
strips were in it,
Yeah.
but they were produced by people like Frank Bellamy, and Mike Noble, and Ron Embleton, and forgotten his first name, Lawrence, some whatever it's called, and they used to paint them. They used to paint them, and they'd leave that line there open, like my shirt. It doesn't. You can't. You can see the form of my shoulder, but the
Yeah.
color of the shirt just goes to white because of the light. Well,
Yeah.
they would color like that, and I was amazed by all that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But and then I saw some of Mike Noble stuff in the early 70s that was in black and white, and the drawings were the same. They just didn't have color on. He would still leave that line out, but continue the drawing above. And that was when I started to notice the differences in Inca. Although I was aware of Joe Sinnott and Frank Giacoya before that.
Yeah.
But with the collection of color with them, it changes the whole thing again. But yeah, I'd say that the Marvel comics was when I started to pay attention.
Mhm.
When I was 11 or 12, to the drawings and the inking and what the inker did. And that was because you'd see Kirby's stuff inked by a different person. You could still tell it was Kirby, but it was different. And that's
Right.
when that's when I started looking at the inkers.
I was always afraid of inks when I was a kid because, I would always be afraid of spilling it or, drawing, you could erase it. And when I was a kid, they brought out erasable ink pens.
Right?
I don't know if you remember those or not.
No.
The Bic company brought them out,
All
and
right.
so it was great writing because I could erase stuff, but it would still leave a little bit of a white line to it,
Yeah.
where the roller pen hit it. But then we got into, Indian inks and that kind of stuff, and it
Yeah.
scared me. It really scared
But
me.
I think society. I think humans are great the way they sort of move around things.
Mm.
That
are uncomfortable or what?
Well, don't spill the ink. Don't
Well,
make the
right, but
mistake.
yeah, right. But
No,
especially in architecture, because you do these huge drawings, and then you'd have a 24 by 36 piece of paper, and then you've got a
Yeah.
tech pen or something. The tech pen ruptures, and
Yeah.
it's out, and it's done. You can't fix it. It's done.
Yeah. I'm not
On
saying
vellum or whatever.
I'm not saying I haven't spilled the ink.
Yeah, well, I have
I'm
too.
just
I have
saying
too.
don't spill the ink.
Yeah, and nothing looks worse than whiteout on like you're saying, on a drawing or
Yeah.
architectural print. It's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
That's one thing I do like about digital is you've got the flexibility and
I
the
think you get
speed.
lazy.
There's a lot of speed in that.
You get lazy with it though, I think. I think you need to be pumped up for it instead of thinking, if I make a mistake, I'll just erase it. We can do that on your pencil work. You can do it anyway. You can
Yeah, I mean, there's something different about the traditional way.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think that you can be a hybrid artist doing both.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because I finish a lot of my stuff digitally. I'll enhance it, put vignettes on it, make it look a little bit more robust. But the original is the original. Yeah, fun stuff.
Well, I'm starting to use. Well, I've used them before, but I'm introducing sponges again. Get some great effects with sponges and things like that. And at the inking stage, so it depends what you want, what you're heading for. But getting back to the inkers, the European line, it's different. It's not such a heavy line. If you look at people like Mobius,
yes,
and Barry Windsor Smith, who inks his own stuff, great penciler as well. But he's an illustrator, really. I think Barry Windsor Smith. But Mobius doesn't do that thick and thin line. I mean, I'd love to see Joe Sinnott ink a Mobius page.
Yes,
but it
There you
probably
go.
wouldn't. But it probably wouldn't work.
No, I think it worked beautifully.
You think so?
I think it would be great. It probably would be a small run, but hey, I think it'd be great. Probably,
Well,
it'd
I
probably
think
be
it.
really interesting.
I think it's interesting though as well. The way that you get some artists, as I know you do, and I certainly do, is we can pencil and ink and letter if need be, and some people don't go anywhere near that. Some people would just do pencil work, and some are just inkers, and some are just letterers. It's quite a, I think it's good to be an all rounder, really.
I think so, and I think there's the master of none. Is not a bad thing.
Yeah,
My
that's
dad
right.
has I've got a book in the library here of the old graphics of how the Ames guides and everything of how they used to do it, and
Yeah,
all the sample fonts of how you would mimic
yeah, yeah.
copy. Oh
Well,
my God!
Frank
What
Bellamy,
a hmm?
Frank Bellamy, the British artist who
Yeah,
drew Thunderbirds for
yeah,
TV21, and he
yep.
also drew Garth later. He does his
No,
own. He's
I don't
not
remember
seen.
that one.
You've not seen Garth?
Mm-mm.
Oh, you've got to get that. He's Bellamy used to created his own typeface for his comics, and you can get that now on digital.
That's
so you
cool.
can, so
Now
well,
it's cake, right?
but
But back then, jeez.
but the thing with
Crazy.
doing that is that every letter, every A is the same. But when you look at Sam Rosen doing it, it's not. It's nearly the same, and that's what makes it good.
Yeah,
It's
right.
not
No,
perfect. That's why.
imperfections. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good.
I mean, I have used computer lettering.
Yeah.
But I'm going back to on the board now because it just looks like part.
Well,
It
and
just
I've
looks
had
weird.
people ask me, I know I told people we're working on it right now, currently trying to get the all my work, all my architectural printing into a format so that I can use that on my books.
Yeah.
On a font. And it's working out, but it's not the same though. It's not the
Right.
same as me printing.
Well,
But
if I can just do a bit of plugging here.
Yeah, hell yeah.
That's on the board.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. I mean, that's, you've done a lot of script though. I mean, that's
You can see the bad joins,
no, it's fine though.
but it works, and it's all part of it to me. And I like the fact that I can put that piece of artwork on the wall and everything's there.
Mm-hmm. It's ready to roll.
Yep. With the lettering on it and everything, even the color. Yep. I'll put color on that later, and it's a complete piece of artwork. But anyway, we digress.
Please like and share this to you guys if you wouldn't mind. Brian K. Morse is in the house. Good morning, Brian. Plugging is Glenn's channel. Yeah, well, I mean, you gotta self-promote, and that's good. There is something to be said though to having consistent. Some people just can't letter. They can barely sign a check. You know what I mean? Just physically. And it's like some of them are just like, God, I've seen. It's funny to see people when I write a letter or if I've done something. God, you got such great handwriting, or you got such great penmanship. I'm like, yeah, 30 years in architectural do that too. Because we used to do it in school, lettering wise, 24 by 36 sheets of paper, 3 30-second print lines. And then we had to fill that sheet up. And I mean, we would write everything. You know how many album covers I pulled apart, lyrics, the Bible, anything I could get my hand. I even worked on the telephone book, just writing things out because you run out of things to write, And it took us
the telephone book, not the American telephone book.
Well,
anyway.
Right. Well, anyway, but that's what we had to do. A lot of these guys were just like, it was insane.
I'm not the best letterer. I think my lettering's awful. I really do. I'm not just saying that. I really do. But at school, if there's anything needed writing on the blackboard, as we used to call it then, in the chalk, that I was always asked to do it. And I used to hate it because I think my lettering's rubbish. But I think the point is that my lettering was probably better than anybody else in the class. It wasn't that it was any good. It was better than what the others were doing.
We're pretty intense too, though. A lot of even we think that our art's not that great. And then we look back on it later and say, oh, okay, I get it. My dad was he did a lot of signs work, a lot of just married signs and that kind of stuff. And I remember we had this again, I think it was like 36 by 48 piece of board, Bristol board. And he had this template that he would have pins in. So this template is basically a sheet of paper, and it would say "just married" on it. It was this beautiful ornate thing that he did, and that's how we put it on there. And then we would actually put lead on the back of the page, put it down on the thing, and then put the whole thing down, pin it, rub the whole thing down, and then peel it off, and it would have the image. And then he would go in, and oh man, it was amazing. It was awesome to watch that. I helped him on a few of them. Really, really cool. But the lettering, my dad was awesome when it came to lettering. What?
Just while we're on lettering, one of my tutors, Arthur Cole at college, he could do shop signs.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. And paint on glass and all that.
On 10 feet wide, and he got it. He brought a job in that he was doing, and this shop front sign, I don't know what it was called, somebody's ice cream parlor. And he brought this piece of wood about 10 feet long and about 2 feet deep. And he penciled on where this lettering was. And he said, watch this. This is how good you have to be. And he wasn't showing up, but he was showing off. But he was brilliant. It was brilliant.
Yeah,
he said, he said, this is what, try doing this. And he got this brush, this big thick brush, and he just wrote over where he penciled, but he walked along while he was doing it. And he did it in one go.
Swoop. Man.
It was like, oh, we're all going home, we're finished now. That's
I'm
the
sure
end.
you're crying. Wait, and I know we'll go back to inking in a second. At Ford, where my dad was a designer, at lunchtimes, the guys, because this is back before the computers, they had a lot of painters, a lot of artists that were there that really did some amazing work. But on the lunch hours, they'd go out and they'd make an extra $100 or whatever, pinstriping cars. So they'd go out to the guys would just get a new car from the lot, whatever. They'd bring it over, and all these artists would go out at lunch. They'd put their get their lunch ready and everything else, and they'd pinstripe the cars, man, right there in the parking lot. It was amazing. It was so, and the lines, it was unbelievable. And there's no difference between that and inking. There's none. It's the same stroke lines. Incredible.
It's like we said at the top. It's a totally different discipline, and it's a real talented thing. You got to have talent to do it.
You do. You need some technique, but also Carl said his father was industrial engineer. That explains a lot. And the lettering was exact. Well, and I'm sure it was. I was trying a little bit of a tag there for Carl, because it's, I know how engineers can be as parents. But
my brother worked in engineering. He used to draw plans, and his lettering was superb, but he couldn't draw to save his life.
Yeah,
but his lettering couldn't draw. His lettering was superb.
Yeah. Drafting is. I'm always a good draftsman, but freehand really is my, what I like to do. Hold on. Brian says my penmanship improved a lot when I did hand lettering for my mini comics, but since I gave it up, my hand, and it is. I would assume you need to keep working at it. Hopefully, it's like not a seismographic chart, but very funny. He's always funny.
Yeah, with the different inking, like we said, if you look at the manga stuff, I'm not really a fan of manga artwork, but you can see how slick it is and how wonderful, and how I think those guys work fast. I don't know.
Oh, they've got to. Because unprecedented amount of volumes and volumes of work that come out a month. I saw a photograph of a Japanese the train, and they were I sent you earlier on about how comics have a bad name because the people in the West, people think they're for children. Mm-hmm. But in Japan, I think they're the biggest selling thing. I think they sell more than prose they do.
books.
Yeah, there's no
and
question.
I saw a photograph of a train with all the people in rush hour, and the businessmen, ties, suits, and they're reading manga, and they're like telephone boxes, aren't they? They're manga.
Oh yeah, incredible.
So I don't know how many people are working on them, but I think it must be like when Kirby started, or when they all started, when there was like a production line.
You would think that there'd be a shortage, paper shortage there.
Well, you see, this is one of the myths. You see, you've just exposed it.
What's that? Oh, what? Paper?
There's enough of everything.
There is. I agree. There's abundance everywhere.
Have you noticed you can have it if you pay for it? Notice that one?
Of course. Well,
nobody ever says no. Nobody ever says no. You can't have any. There aren't any. They say we got to pay.
Is this turning into a Truth Mongers show or an ink show? Yeah. What is this? Okay, so what about the favorite ink? You like Indian ink? What kind of inks do you work with?
Yeah, I use Higgins Black Magic ink.
Yeah, that's what I do too.
Very nice, very black. In fact, I need some more. But yeah, really good. depends how I'm doing it. I'm using a lot of these pens at the moment.
Yeah, the tech pens.
Yeah. And but I
I
do
use
like
a
using
ton of them. I mean,
yeah,
and
I
then
do.
I'll do the larger stuff with the Sharpies, just because that's me, and it handles watercolor really, really well. So, but a lot of the Barol or a lot of the
Yeah.
Micron,
if I can give anybody a tip, if you
pardon
want
the
to
pun
do
with the ink tips, but yeah. Okay,
if you want to do Kirby Crackle, use I can't see where it is. Use a bullet marker.
Oh yeah, bullet marker, sure.
Because when you dab it, when you put it on the page, it'll spoil the fiber end, and it'll spread, and you get some really good effects.
You do.
So there's a tip for you.
We should do a when we do the tools and stuff, we'll do a little bit of technical stuff.
We should do a Kirby Crackle program.
We could do a you know what we should do? We should maybe do a Comics Unlimited podcast art style, where we're both doing a live drawing of the same thing, and then use our techniques, different techniques for the same thing. That would be cool. What do you guys think? If you guys want us to do that, leave it in the comments. We'd love to hear that. That would be fun. I still think though that with the inkers, we're just scratching the surface, but inkers in general though are just as much storytellers as the pencilers. Whoever wrote the story is one thing, but I think that layer upon layer upon layer really does tell the story and broadens the whole scope of the page. I mean, period.
I remember reading about it. I can't remember whether they actually said it to me, but I remember reading about it for sure when Jack Kirby, when in the 40s, when he was working with Joe Simon on Captain America.
Yeah.
Kirby would pencil. They'd throw the ideas around. Kirby would pencil it up. Joe Simon would letter, and then ink, and then he would give the pages to Kirby, and Kirby would go over some of the inking to make it bolder and put some more oomph into it, type of thing. And then he would give it back to Joe Simon, and he would do the same. So they were sort of building this thing up. But I think today, and certainly by the 60s, 50 years, 60 years ago, they wouldn't have time to do that. They wouldn't be able to do that. It would have to be done immediately. But it just shows you how they collaborated and how they were both pencilers and inkers.
I mean, it was a bullpen though, right? They had everybody in one section. It wasn't like they're walking across town or flying across the country to meet them to,
somebody drawing panel borders, what a job that would be.
Well, even Image started out like that too in the 90s. They were, they were all just in a group in an apartment or whatever, trying to make it work, putting out board to board, trying to get things done. So
I'll tell you one thing I don't like, one technique that people do. I think Chaikin does a lot of it, and using that letter tone thing.
Yeah.
I don't like that because that's mechanical, and it's to me that spoils the.
You think it's too
the hand drawn.
I can understand that.
So I would never use that.
Yeah.
But it's the inking thing is. There's so many talented artists out there who are really good. I mean, Joe Sinnott's was a great penciler.
Yeah,
as well.
I agree, 100%.
And I would imagine that he was quite frustrated in some ways with not doing this. I know he did pencil work for his church and his town and things like that.
Yeah.
But his living was on inking, and I just imagine he was doing. I bet he was doing 3 pages a day. I bet he was good. I bet he was good. Fast. I mean, we know he was.
I've seen some of those splash pages that are it's nuts. Yeah. It's incredible. I mean, and to think that they did it manually versus with digital, I mean, just unbelievable.
This is what I mean. I think
every stroke has got its consistency. I mean, just insane.
You see, I think people like Joe Sinnott and Jack Kirby should be banished from history because they just look at their stuff and I just want to retire. Just want to finish because you think no, But
we've got to, but we need them so that we know where to set the bar, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But
like I said at the top, the people think that the ink. A lot of people think that the ink is just there to make it presentable for the engraver so it can be printed, but it's not. Like you said, it's a different. The inker puts a different slant on it, different kind of storytelling. There's a lot of weight in the lines, but then Mobius doesn't use the weight, but that's mainly because he's using color. But there's all different ways of getting through it. As you do with your work, you do all of it. I do all of it, and I think it's great. To me, it's a great. Back in the 80s, late 80s and early 90s, when I was working a lot of freelance artwork, it was great to have a different job on my board every day. I'd be drawing portrait, I'd be drawing a comic strip and changing it like that and mixing it up. So people like Kirby who were just knocking pencil pages out a day must have driven them crazy.
But I would think so, yeah.
As we've
it
said,
would be monotonous. It would be totally monotonous to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's having a great time doing the stories. So
yeah. All right. So your best combo then would be
Kirby Simmer in America, and in Europe it would be Mobius.
It's good.
And working with himself.
I think I got to say Frank Miller. I know he's not collaborating, but I mean, I know he had some people collaborating on his work, but Frank Miller was, I think that Mike Mignola though is regardless of whether it's digital or not, I still think that he telling stories with everything pre-ink, but then having because really his stuff is now, it's all digital.
Yeah.
His understanding of what he wants to have the lines of color on, giving that to his digital, colorist and that I still think that Frank Miller and Mike, for my generation, those two are the ones. I can totally agree with you with Kirby and Sennett though. Totally.
Have you heard of Brian Bolland?
Mm-mm.
He drew Judge Dredd in 2000 AD. He's
oh
British.
Yes, yeah, okay, yes, I did.
And he draws like photographs, his drawings, and he takes him 4 years to do one panel.
Like Alex Ross kind of.
Yeah, that's right. So precise. But his artwork is absolutely perfect. He drew the Killing Joke, I think, Alan Moore, the Batman.
He did. I've got it up there. That's why.
Absolutely beautiful, beautiful. And I would love to be a fly on his drawing board and watch him do that. But now he does it all on digital. And I'm thinking, this man must have enough money because his originals go for thousands.
Oh, sure, easy.
Yet now he doesn't have an original, does he, with the computer? Well, you don't.
Yeah, but he's got to have printing rights to it, something.
Oh,
he's got to be making some coin.
Yeah, but imagine having a Brian Bolland original on your wall.
Yeah, right. Well, maybe that's why. That's why. Because if you look at it like that, the NFT stuff that's coming out and all the digital marketing side of it, if you've got a limited production, say you only do 2 drawings a year traditionally, and you do everything else digital, those traditional pieces that are going to be hanging, that are one-offs, are going to be worth so much money.
Yeah.
In that regard. So I don't think marketing wise, it's brilliant, I think. But who's suffering,
Well,
for it? That's my thing. So
I just like drawing. I just love drawing with a pencil on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
I just love it. And I've done computer artwork and it's okay, but I just love the pencil, the drag, the tooth
low
on
technology
the paper,
and it works.
It's
one off. I mean, it's a one off.
And since I've been drawing, which is like all my life, I've never had to worry that the electricity wouldn't work.
That's one of and I understand it. I do like the fact Brian has a good point.
Yeah.
Camelot 3000, I remember that. Never collected it, but I remember it. So Brian Rodman made a statement that when he switched over to digital, Rob and his wife, they got everything for him and got it all set up and everything else. Saving the money is incredible on what he did. He said saving money on pencil, paper, blah, 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 over time. And it's so much faster now for him to produce books. I get what he's saying there. That I can understand totally. But I don't think I'm ever going to get fully away from pencil to paper. I don't think I'll ever do it. Digitally, I'm set up to go. Cintiq wise and everything, but it's still, I think it's for me, it's more of a hybrid thing than actually switching off one to go to the other. I don't think it's going to work, but
I just like drawing. Not that Brian doesn't draw. I'm just saying that with a pencil,
I'm with you. I
just like doing
and
it.
I understand where you're coming from. That was a good show. That was pretty good. I know it was short, sweet. If you guys have any anchors that you like, from days past or new products that are coming out now for comic books and that, let us know right in the comments. Give us some ideas because we'd love to hear what the variations are. Everybody's different perspective on things. I think that the art show, though, we've got a couple votes for the art show in here.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll do that. We'll do a live draw.
Could I just say before we go,
Yeah.
If anybody's got any Kirby Thors that Vince Coletta inked, he is more of a European style than Joe Sinnott because he has a very thin line.
Yeah.
Put that next to some Joe Sinnott Fantastic Four, and you'll see what I mean with the thick and thin line.
I'll check that
just
out.
a good
I think I've got
comparison.
a Thor. I think I have a Thor with that.
And that's why for me, Vince Coletta was Kirby's best inker on Thor. Sinnott did a couple, but he just made it look like the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, right.
And it shouldn't be. So check out Vince Coletta's thin, what I call European line against Joe Sinnott American line. It's good to look at. Wally Wood and Dan Adkins. Yeah, well, Dan Adkins was taught by Wally Wood. That's why he draws.
Really?
That's why he draws like him. Yeah.
Tom Palmer.
Yeah.
Those are good ones, man.
I'll tell you a really unsung inker, and that was the guy who inked the Eternals who died. What was he called? John Verporten. He was only 37 when he died. He was a fantastic inker.
37. Geez.
37. But he went to be the production manager for some reason. But his work on the Eternals and other Kirby stuff, it's superb. But he died, 37. I mean,
amazing. So yeah, that's about it. I mean, what were they inking? And that's I think that's pretty good. I think Kirby, obviously Kirby's king here, and you guys know that. But I think that there's a wealth of storytelling with just a little bit of embellishment, like you were saying, or a little bit of following the line for some others, depending on what we were using.
And like with most things, it's what you leave out.
Yeah, right. Like we were talking with Frank.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's the negative space around. It's not the actual thing.
Yeah, it's the whole thing.
They say that in music. It's not the music. It's the space between the notes.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
So yeah, appreciate you guys stopping in. Thanks, Glenn, man. It's always it's always fun. We have a great time here. So if you guys have any other questions or any other comments of what you want for the next shows, let us know. I know we don't have the next one picked out yet, but I'm sure we'll come up with something. Any ideas yet? No.
What we were saying earlier, lettering. We've got the whole thing.
Yes.
We've got writing, composition, structure of world building. Vehicles. We can cover the whole thing.
So yeah, we'll go through it, but we'll do each one. I think lettering's a good one. We'll see how it goes this week, and then we'll make a judgment call. Yeah, if anybody has any comments, let us know on that too. Thanks again. I got to write, man. I don't know about you. I got to draw and write today. So
I'm drawing.
All right. Have a good day.
See you later. Yeah, see you, everybody.
Yeah, we'll see you.
Thanks for looking.
Thanks.
See you.
Welcome to the Comics Unlimited podcast with your hosts, Glenn B. Fleming and Ted Davis.